Nós que conhece, que aqui foi. Coisa comprada. Aqui nas horas, a moça hora.
9419036728 soru hakkında orada. Temizleyelim. Peki. Peki soralım bu sefer tamam. Mari gosa achum momente mission panel yet month to choose il to the by that mathematic जो पूरे फोन दिखेगा तो ये जवाब तो वही होना चाहिए वही आंसर होना तो इसका टाइम कम है इंसाइट यूनिवर्सिटी काउंसिल का नहीं हॉर्टिकल्चर स्कूल में शाम अक्सर ये वो दूध से तो मुझे पास दूध शाम मैंने दिया है मैं उसको फॉर्मेट कर रहा हूँ एज पर दिस तो इस तरह का लोग वही बेक रिस्पॉन्स तो ये भी सेकंड भी यदि फॉर्मेट सोशल मास्टर हैं इंशाल्लाह दस में आपको ये भेज देता हूँ मगर गोस्गस में मेरे के दो मुझे कैसे ना ऐसे मेरे पोस्ट तुम्हारे
Welcome to the next session, afternoon session in this program. So, welcome all the participants to this second lecture. We are humbled this time that our speaker, Dr. FVSc&AH, has joined us directly from UK. Welcome, Dr. FVS.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So nice of you, sir. We are humbled to see you over here.
That's a pleasure.
So we'll not take much of your time. Before you just take over, I will let my participants know about you something. Okay, we have Dr. FVSc&AH, who is the regional representative for South Asia, and he works with the governments of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, that's the SAARC countries, including Nepal, Bangladesh, and India. And in India, to represent and coordinate IRRI's programs regionally. That's an International Rice Research Institute's programs. Dr. Nafis has educated as a chemist at the University of Manchester, London in 1981. He did his MSc in chemistry from University of Toronto in 1983. Did his PhD in organic chemistry, again from the University College London, 1986. Postdoctorate from University of Cambridge, 1987. In addition to all that, I'm really surprised to see here that he has done his BA honors in politics, philosophy, and history, again from the University of London in 1993, and then again LLB honors from University of London 1998. So you can well imagine from the profile of the Dr. Nafis that besides being a chemist, I mean a specialist in chemistry, he has his honors in politics, philosophy also. So he joined the chief scientist group at the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food in 1988, where he managed research programs on food safety, nutrition, and environmental contamination of food. Following that, he was a senior policy maker in Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, United Kingdom, working on the environmental impact of food production and on climate change and food security. He then served as head of science at the Department of Energy and Climate Change, United Kingdom. And until recently, he was director of Research Council's office in India from 12 to 16. He is also recognized expert on sustainable agriculture, food security, and climate change. I welcome Dr. Nafis over here this afternoon in India. Most welcome, Dr. Nafis. I wish you start your presentation, and you can just share your screen. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Right, let me just share my screen.
Yes.
Can everyone see that?
Not yet, sir.
No?
Not yet, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is coming now.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yes, sir. Go ahead with presentation, please.
Well, thank you very much. So what I'll be talking about for the next 40 minutes or so is on creating sustainable value chains for food system transformation. But before I do that, let me say something about IRI, for those of you who are not aware. So IRI was founded in 1960 by Ford and Rockefeller Foundations, and it's part of the consortium of international agricultural research centers. So very much involved in the green revolution throughout Asia and developing countries around the world. So we're headquartered in the Philippines, but we have working in 17 countries in South Asia, East and Southern Africa, and Southeast Asia. What I'd like to do over the next half an hour or so is talk about a few things. First, the green revolution in South Asia and its impact. Moving on to the state of nutrition in South Asia, and in particular referring to the triple burden, the impact or the effect of undernutrition, micronutrient deficiency, and now overnutrition. Also, moving on to the emerging new consensus on the externalities of the food system, and I'll explain a little bit more during the course of my talk about what that means and what needs to be done. And including this is some of the work that we've been doing in IRI on addressing some of these issues. The overall context, of course, is the Sustainable Development Goals, and very much the subject of this program. So let me start by saying South Asia region, comprising of number of countries: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, etc. It's home to 1.75 billion people and has a combined GDP of nearly $3.5 trillion US. And of course, the Green Revolution transformed South Asia from a an area that was chronically food deficit to one where there is now a food surplus. And in doing that, it lifted millions of people out of poverty. And that's because nearly 70% of the population in the region live in rural areas, many of which are engaged in agriculture. And as you'll see from the GDP, aggregate GDP figure, the South Asia since the 1990s policy reforms has experienced substantial economic growth. And of course, in terms of food and production of food, there's been phenomenal progress. So for example, in India, we've got a substantial increase in food grain production, pulses, milk. I haven't put vegetables on this particular chart, but again, vegetable production has increased tremendously, and that and now India is the second largest producer of vegetable outside of China, and it is surplus. The region as a whole is surplus in most, if not all, food commodities. Now that's an important point to bear in mind, because as we shall see, that hasn't stopped the deficit of nutrition. If we go to Bangladesh as another example, you'll see there in this graph the huge increase in production of rice. So the yield has gone from 1.7 tons in the 1970s to, on average, over 4.5 tons now. And it's moved from rice deficit to self-sufficient. Now, I can say much of this increase in production has been due to the adoption of high-yield varieties, 80% of which are based on IRI germplasm. So IRI has played a very important role in this. I thought I'd show this slide because it shows you the rate of change in the region, in Bangladesh in particular. In Bangladesh, the economy has grown. It's tripled in size in the last 10 years nearly, driven largely by the RMG sector. But the question I want to ask is, would this have been possible without an increase in agricultural productivity? And my answer, I would suggest, is no, it wouldn't have been possible. It would not have been possible. So it illustrates the importance of agriculture to the overall economic well-being of the region. However, as I said, notwithstanding the success of the Green Revolution, the success of the economic development in the region as a whole, I think it is accepted that the current food system is failing. And here are some illustrative examples of what I mean by that. So you have 45% of children under 5 years old in several Indian states are stunted, similar number in Bangladesh are zinc deficient, and others are vitamin A deficient, and women, and this is a general issue across the region, of reproductive age are anemic. Here I give the figure for Nepal. And last year, the Global Hunger Index was published. Is it possible for someone to mute their mic, because I hear some background noise? The Global Hunger Index score for 2019, and this is an indicator based on under 5 mortality, prevalence of obesity, stunting, and undernutrition. And what you can see from this is that South Asia and Sub-Saharan, which is much poorer, have roughly the same global index scores. So there's a particular issue in South Asia. And recently, the Public Health Foundation of India, in its report, said the improvement in nutritional status hasn't kept pace with the significant economic gains and prosperity and increase in agricultural productivity in recent years. And nutritional status and progress and reducing stunting varies across Indian states. And if you look at this map that's been produced, that was presented in the Nutrition Foundation in India report, you'll see there's a band across central India where there are very high levels. Nearly half of under 5 children are stunted. Of course, this has been recognized by the government, and there's the National Nutrition Mission Poshan Abhiyan, which was launched in 2018 with a specific target of reducing stunting from 38% to 25% by 2022. It's identified a number of high priority areas, and there have been incentives programs to develop action plans by the states to address this. Now, I mentioned earlier on about the triple burden. So what we have across India is undernutrition, people having calorie deficits, and that still exists partly because of the poverty that exists and across the region itself. And hopefully that will be addressed as people increase their incomes. But there's at the same time, we have micronutrient deficiency, which is reduced intakes of micronutrients, zinc, iron, vitamin A, etc. And at the same time, in some areas, increasing obesity and overweight. So you have these three things, these three issues, commonly referred to as the triple burden, occurring across South Asia, all of South Asia, at the same time. And of course, you're all familiar with the SDG goals. All countries in the region are signatories to the SDG goals, and in particular, in this training program, we're looking specifically at SDG number 2, zero hunger. And what zero hunger says is that it wants to ensure access by all people, including the poor and vulnerable, to safe, nutritious and sufficient food all year round. However, meeting SDGs in South Asia will be a big challenge, and it's going to be a big challenge for a number of reasons. First, rising populations in the region. We talk about the demographic bonus. The populations will continue to rise over the next 10, 20 years. Despite the increase in the GDPs across the region, in the economies across the region, there has been an significant increase in economic inequality. That's an important point because the distribution of wealth, the Gini coefficient, has not improved. There's poor diets, as well as that we have land degradation, climate change impacts, water stress, and agricultural policies that neglect externalities and on nutrition and the natural resource base. And of course, COVID-19 pandemic has put back progress that has been made, primarily because one will expect that incomes across this region, but also across the world, will decrease, and that will be reflected in the kinds of diets that people can afford. Last year saw a number of major reports launched, one of which was the Eat Lancet Commission report that was published in 2019. Wasn't the only one. There were similar reports produced by UNDP and others. But what the Eat Lancet Commission, which was prepared by 37 leading multidisciplinary group of scientists from 16 countries, did was look at the issue of food and nutrition security, but also in the context of planetary health. They spoke of the need to have an agriculture and food system that lived within planetary boundaries and was within the safe operating space, as they described it, of the planet. Now, this is important because if you think about climate changes, which is one of the indicators that they use, over the next decade, if you look at what is happening in other sectors, for example, the energy sector, there is a big transition to decarbonize that sector. So, for example, in the UK at the moment, there are days where no fossil fuels are used in generation of electricity. And that is true for large parts of Europe. So by 2030, you'd expect to have significant progress made on decarbonizing the energy system. And that's also true in terms of the ambitious targets in India, in particular, in terms of solar energy and renewable energy. What that means, of course, is that the contribution from agriculture to climate greenhouse gas emissions will increase and increase significantly unless something is done. At the moment, it's 25%, a quarter of greenhouse gas emissions are from agriculture and food systems. And if other sectors decrease, the energy sector, which I've mentioned, the transport sector, then it goes without saying that the contribution from agriculture will increase proportionately. So what the Lancet Commission called for was a food system transformation to achieve both the SDGs and the Paris Agreement target of staying below 1.5 degrees for the global average temperature. So in their report, they talked about a number of strategies, one of which is seeking national commitments to shift towards healthy diets, and they describe possible healthy diets for different regions depending on local cultures, local eating habits, etc. Importantly, they recommend a reorientation of agricultural priorities from producing high calories to producing nutritious foods. So when we think about the food system, and when the Eat Lancet Commission and others talk about transformation of the food system, what are we talking about? It's not simply the food supply system, and we'll see in this chart on the left, the food supply chain, the production system, but it is the whole food of environment, about availability, access, quality and safety, consumer behavior. So it's a whole network of issues, a complex network of issues that involves food production, distribution, supply chains, the policy context, the social economic drivers, etc. And all those, and this particular diagram is taken from a recent report by the high-level panel on food security and nutrition, and the whole system impacts quite heavily on these on the sustainable development goals. And if we want to deliver the SDGs, then we need to address the food system. In developed countries, the big issue is non-communicable diseases and obesity and diabetes. And what we're seeing in many developing countries is, as I said, the triple burden. But increasingly, there's an issue as particularly sections of the communities in South Asia increase their incomes, diets that are following the trend that you see in developed countries. That is to say, high fat, high salt, highly processed food, and high levels of meat consumption. So one of the things that needs to be done is to ensure that the trajectory that's being followed in developing countries can be nudged away from the model that has happened already in developed countries. And I think we have an opportunity in developing countries to do that nudging, but it will require quite significant change. And of course, when we think about sustainable development, there are three elements, as everyone knows. And sustainable development, as a Brundtland Commission back in many years ago said, it's the needs of the present without meeting the needs of the present without compromising the future generations. So it's the environment, the economic, and the social. Now, there's a lot of talk about win-win here. One of the things that I want to point out that sometimes there will be some occasions where a win-win might not be possible, and there'll have to be trade-off between the different dimensions of sustainable development. And that will be a decision that countries will need to take and societies will need to take. And those decisions will need to be in the light of priorities in particular places at particular times. The point I'm making is not going to be the same for every society at every stage. It will depend on their stage of development. So when you think about food system transformation and what it will require, well, I'd suggest four things are needed. So you need to be able to underpin healthier populations by enabling access to nutrition and healthy food for all. Guarantee sustainable food production, processing and retailing, mitigating adapting to climate change, of course. But in South Asia in particular, where 80% of food is produced by smallholder farmers, improving the livelihoods and resilience, enhancing the prosperity of farming and rural community. That is a must. Without that, it's not going to be possible to achieve that food system transformation that we want. Now, one way that this might be done, and there's been quite a lot of work, as many of you will know from the literature, is perhaps through developing sustainable food value chain. There has been critical number of for focusing too much on cereals, rice, wheat, maize in particular, and in a desire to get food security, i.e. calories, what was the increased production of staples. Now, the criticism level particular policy is that what that has resulted in is a loss in diversity of diets. So moving forward then, what we need now to do is develop sustainable food value chains for appropriate cropping and mixed livestock fish systems that are tailored for specific regions and agroecologies. That's not to say that cereals won't be important. Of course, culturally they're very important. The backbone of agriculture, but we need to develop food value chains that are deliver diverse food products. And secondly, and importantly, the value chain has to be strengthened with the objective of increasing farm gate prices. Now, this is something that obviously is a little bit contentious, but unless increasing value add is returned to smallholder farmers, then it's difficult to see how you can get the incentives in place to increase productivity and secondly, increase diversity. And the second objective has to be about better quality of food products for consumers. So again, there's been a lot of literature about how we might achieve this, and IRI itself has been working over the last few years on mixed systems. So the kind of things that we've been working on is rice-based agri-food systems. So for example, in Myanmar and Bangladesh, and northeastern India, in Assam, etc., we've been working on rice fish system, developing rice fish systems where you cultivate rice, but also fish. So what that requires is understanding and optimizing cropping calendars for the benefit of farmers and their families and rural communities. Another approach, which may be an interim approach, is biofortification and biofortification of staples. In large parts of South Asia, rice being a staple, one of the things that we can do is increase the micronutrient content of rice. And indeed, we have had some success in developing high iron and high zinc varieties of rice, significantly higher iron and zinc levels in these particular varieties. And of course, in terms of non-communicable diseases, another issue that's becoming more and more prevalent in South Asia is diabetes. So developing low GI varieties of rice is also an area of work that we've been focusing on. And what we've done is develop molecular tools to modify resistant starch content of rice, phenotyping tools, and also identify mutations in the IRI gene bank, where we have over 130,000 varieties of rice with lower glycemic index. So going forward, we see this as going to be a major niche to address the growing problem of diabetes and non-communicable diseases in South Asia. But of course, it's not enough to develop supply side. One of the things that needs to be done is to raise awareness. And here, IRI has been families, women in particular in rural areas, to create awareness of the importance of micronutrients and benefits of biofortified rice varieties for the health of their children. So that's a really important thing. And when we think about awareness, one of the issues that we need to spend more time is understanding food choice. Now, at the moment in South Asia, we're seeing this transition to foods that are high in fat, high in salt, and highly processed. So, for example, if you go to any village, in any part of the region, you might find these processed foods, which are the noodles, are the famous example, which are available everywhere. They're very cheap. And one of the reasons that people prefer them is not only the taste, it's the convenience, etc. So we need to understand the gastronomic system, the reasons why people make particular kinds of food choices, in order to understand or nudge towards better diets for themselves, but also for the planet. And some of the work that we've been doing, and we've developed this app, which helps people choose, and it's across different income groups, an optimum diet for themselves and their family. So understanding that behavioral choice is absolutely crucial. People eat food because not only to get their nutrition, they also eat for pleasure. And understanding the social, cultural pleasure drivers of food consumption is a hitherto neglected area. That must be an area that we need to understand to get the demand side right on this transition. And of course, food safety. So we've talked a lot about nutrients, we've talked a lot about macronutrients, micronutrients, and production of food, access, availability, etc. But food safety is a crucial issue that must be addressed at the same time. If it's not safe, it's not food. Diarrhea, foodborne disease is a major cause of the outcomes that we see of stunting, wasting, etc. So it's important that at the same time as dealing with increasing sustainably the production and diversification of food, that the food safety environment is also addressed. So what needs to be done? Well, as I said, chains is a must, and IRI, along with other organizations, is working on that, integrating agriculture more explicitly with nutrition, is something that, again, a number of organizations, including ourselves, are actively engaged in. Fortification or biofortification, I think, is a transition strategy to address some of the more immediate needs. And of course, behavior change, raising awareness and improving food safety. But without different policies and institutional change, and I'm happy to discuss this a little bit more in terms of subsidies, MSPs, the safety networks, etc. Without changes in them, without institutional change, we're not going to get the transformative change that we want to see in terms of the food system transformation. I shall stop there, but I just want to emphasize the point about 2030. We're now in 2020. 10 years is a relatively short time to achieve this. Next year, the UN has convened a food system transformation conference where a lot of these issues will be discussed, and hopefully we will arrive at a consensus around what needs to be done.
Thank you, Dr. Nafis, for your nice presentation over here. I think now this topic is open for discussion. The participants, they wish to have clarification or interaction with our speaker. Please raise hands. Anyone of you, any of the participants who is interested in interacting with our honorable speaker, may please raise hand. Is there any? Yes. Any of the speaker, any of the candidates, any of the participants who want to just have an interaction with our speaker, please. Dr. Muhi, please unmute yourself. Dr. Muhi, please unmute yourself. Dr. Muhi, unmute yourself, please. Yes. Professor Sajjad.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I want to ask that if all the countries, all the regions have a staple food, maybe rice, it may be maize. How to, if that is, it doesn't have a proper nutrition, how can that can be changed? The staple food can be changed for the particular region.
Well, I don't think we're talking about changing staple foods. Staple foods are staple by definition because they are consumed by the vast majority of people, and that will continue. I mean, if you look at Eastern India and Bangladesh, Myanmar, the consumption of rice in these areas, if you look at the statistics, in many cases, it's approaching 150 kilograms per person per year or more. Now, 70–80% of calorie intake is derived from rice in these areas, in these regions. Now, even though I'm from IRI, I can see that that is not a healthy diet. So there needs to be a diversification. There needs to be increasing consumption of vegetables, pulses, fruits, etc. in that diet to increase protein, micronutrients, etc. That's not to say that the substantial part of the diet, the plate. Now, if you think of it in terms of the plate, and one of the nice things about the Eat Lancet Commission report was it gave examples of the kinds of plates that would deliver a diet that was consistent with planetary health. And carbohydrates, starch foods are still a major part of that. So cereals diminishing in significance, they will remain, as I said, the backbone, or whether it's in a wheat system or a rice system, of a plate. It's just that there needs to be, and there ought to be, further diversification of the diet.
Okay.
I have a query, sir.
Yes.
Hello.
Any other query, please?
Yeah, I have a query, sir.
Ahmed Iqbal, who is there?
Hello, this is Dr. Parvez here.
Sure, please. Go ahead.
Hello, am I audible?
Hello.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Sir, it was really a nice presentation, but I have one query, sir. You talk about diversification of diet or food.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
possible in countries like India or other Asian countries where poverty is a big challenge?
Yeah, yes, it is. So I was in a conference in Bhopal last year, and the dignitaries there on the dais spoke about the success of Madhya Pradesh in producing all food commodities. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that India is surplus in fruit and vegetables. It is the second largest producer in the world after China. However, that doesn't translate, and if you look at the National Household Food Survey, that doesn't translate into consumption. So one of the issues is, why is that? Now, part of the reason is price. So one of the things that you have in South Asia is because of the issues around the processing chain and the supply chain, you have a boom bust in price. You have very high price, and then price collapses. So it's bad for the farmer, it's bad for the consumer. And as a result, although India produces a lot of fruit and vegetables, a huge amount of that is wasted. It goes to waste, perishable. So if you could develop the cold chain, if you could get the rural markets working effectively, etc., you could address the issues of availability, access, and affordability of fruits and vegetables.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I see there's a question from Dr. Hassin. Considering the present pandemic situation, what aspects are important for future food security? Now, we've just done an assessment across South Asia region, looking at resilience of the agriculture system, and partly to our surprise, we found that the agriculture system thus far has been remarkably resilient. So how did the pandemic affect agriculture across the region? Well, when you had the lockdowns introduced across everywhere, you had issues about supply, input supplies, fertilizers, seeds, etc. Also issues around farm labor, enable restrictions on movement. But what we saw was very quickly public authorities in every country took a concerted effort to ensure that the agriculture system, the food production system worked. One of the issues, though, going forward is you have, in most of the countries in the region, a lot of people who went, particularly migrant workers, went from cities to the rural areas. And now there's a stickiness about returning back to the cities. Now, I suspect a lot of people will remain in the rural areas for a longer than anticipated. I was reading today, for example, that only 10% of the migrant workers have returned to Surat in Gujarat. So what that means is that you have a large number of people in rural areas, and it's really important now to develop the rural economy, the agricultural economy, the post-farm gate process economy, so there'll be jobs and increasing viable jobs for those people who, I think a good number, are going to stay back in rural areas. We have in the past assumed that there will be a migration to cities, and that migration is one way and it's inevitable. Traditional models of structural transformation. But what we're seeing is a reverse of that. Now, it's a question mark how long that will last, but I suspect that more people will remain in rural areas than would be envisaged otherwise. Providing jobs in the rural economy, and that means agriculture is important.
Sheikh Firdaus, Dr. Sheikh Firdaus is there.
Yes, yes.
Okay, you want to just, put something?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for an elaborate talk on food production systems. Sir, since, am I audible, sir?
Yes, 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 please.
Sir, since you're from Rice Research Institute and have been working at international level with the SAARC countries, I want to grab this opportunity and ask a few queries, sir. I have two queries. Once we take rice, we take livestock, cattle and buffalo. These are two main food sources, but they are being blamed for carbon footprints and greenhouse emissions. Sir, how do you see this vis-a-vis challenge of starvation, global warming and climate change, especially in developing countries? That's point number one. So query number second is, since you have been working with SAARC countries, so I want you to recommend one success story or one that initiative that was taken in SAARC countries that has led to considerable positive change vis-a-vis our targets of zero hunger.
Yeah. Okay. Starting off with the rice systems and the livestock systems that are the main contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. Well, the livestock systems in particular, meat consumption across India, Bangladesh, Nepal is very low per capita. So it's, if you compare it with US, Australia, UK, Western Europe, it's a fraction. It's the figures on average is about 5 kilograms per person per year, thereabouts. So the biggest problem with livestock is not at the moment in South Asia. The biggest problem is in the US, Australia, with livestock, and they are enteric fermentation is the biggest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture. As regards rice, yes, in the region, rice cultivation is a major producer of methane, in particular greenhouse gas emissions, nitrous oxides. However, we have been working new dry seeded rice cultivation, new approaches where you don't need paddy, alternative wetting and drying where you significantly minimize amount of water used, and that has the double benefit of reducing methane emissions from paddy. So there are, when I talk about significant, I mean more than 30% reduction in emissions, very significant emissions. So there are approaches, different ways of growing rice, which don't depend on flooding fields, and therefore you don't get the methane emissions or significantly reduced methane emissions from that. In terms of positive change, well, there's a lot about the Green Revolution, but without the Green Revolution, I showed you that chart of Bangladesh, where it went from food deficits in terms of food production to food surplus in 20 years. Now, it's that needs to be taken on board, because there was in India, the whole region in the 1960s, there was, the expression used was ship to mouth in terms of food. India depended on US grain shipments for its very survival. Now, because of the Green Revolution, we moved on from that. I think the criticism of the Green Revolution is overplayed. Now, it is true that we need to move away from high input agriculture and move towards a more ecologically balanced system. But that is a great success. That has been a great success. The other big positive change I would highlight is is in the milk sector, milk production in India. Again, I saw some figures on that. The milk production in India, and that's because of the way that it's been organized. And this is an example of where the right policies, the right approaches, the right partnerships between farmers and producers and processors enable a sector to take off. And that model is something I think we need to extend beyond the milk sector to other sectors, the fruit and vegetable sector.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, I want your guidance regarding India's present situation about the food safety, since as on date, for some people, food is not a big problem. Rather, they are facing the problem of obesity and overuse of diet. On the other hand, some people are undernourished. So, and all of a sudden, the platter cannot be changed for a large population. So, should we resort to some fortification of feed you suggested in your lecture? And some changes in regulation, as you are experienced with high level delegations in India also. So what is your take home message for us regarding fortification without changing any pattern?
Yeah, so at some point we're going to have to the issue of delivering a healthy plate to everybody for every meal is going to have to be the goal. Now that is going to be culturally specific. What is something that is acceptable in, say, Chennai is not going to be the same as what is going to be acceptable from cultural perspective in Srinagar. They're not going to be the same. There are different histories, different cultures, different food tastes, etc. But nonetheless, we know roughly what a tasty, acceptable, nutritious meal in those two different areas is going to be. that is consistent with their local food cultures. Because one of the things that we forget when we talk about broad statistics in terms of production is food is something that people uh, uh, enjoy or want to enjoy. And that is partly determined by the kind of cultural specifics of the food culture. So that's an important point to bear in mind. So that can be changed. Uh, but in terms of changing that, yes, it's going to be a transition. I talked about this food choice app. It's going to be working with people in different areas about nudging them towards more healthy foods. Now, in the meantime, for the very poor, there's going to be a continuing issue of calorie deficiency and micronutrient deficiency. So the question for them is, how do you address that in the short to medium term? And that's where biofortification and fortification comes in.
Yes, government is fortifying the floor, which is distributed, and also the Anganwadi in that, and also the midday meal policy. What in addition to that?
So fortification of staples. Well, we've got fortification of staples, but also diversification of what is available. So what I'm saying is that fortification is an interim that needs to be done of staples of rice, of wheat, etc. And the government's in India policies to enable that. That's great. You need to get that into the PDS system. And that's going to take a little bit of time to do that. But in the future, the price of fruit and vegetables has to be lowered and has to be stabilized. It can't oscillate like it does. And there are supply side issues that the government can take or public authorities can take, better roads, better cold chains, etc., etc., close to villages, close to points of production to enable that lower consistent prices of fruit and vegetables. And that will enable access and availability.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So, is there any other participant who wants just to have interaction?
Yes, sir.
Who is there? Mohit, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, I don't have to ask anything. It was all elaborative. But what I perceive is that it's just my way, my thinking, my perception. What I have seen that what I have learned from your lecture is that this sustainable growth, it depends upon the region, upon different countries. It's different. It should be like differently monitored and differently set for different countries, because we have seen in India, we have seen that although the farmers, they produce surplus quantity of grains, but we still see poverty, we still see malnutrition, undernourishment, and I think that's not getting what they actually deserve to get. They are not in a position to buy things, they are not in a position to get things. That's what you said in your lecture, that we need to address on each and every aspect, not only on growing surplus quantity, fortification, and etc. That we have to make it sure that it reaches the masses, it reaches the people who actually require it. I mean, the poor, their poverty alleviation has to be done. Something has to be done about that. And we have seen farmers, they just destroying their produce because they are not getting the adequate returns for their produce, what they have invested. They do not get the adequate returns for that. And we have seen people destroying their crops, people destroying their produce on roads. And we have also seen that stores of these grains storage, that units in our country, being rotten and all that, the not going to the people. I think it has to be sort of rationalized between what the the government policy matters that need to be rectified. The people who need it the most, that has to be rectified, that they should receive that thing. Only we cannot say that only producing and fortifying this agricultural produce, yeah, whatever, livestock, everything, that is one aspect. The another aspect is that the people, they should be the poor who require it the most, they should be able to receive it. That's what I said. This is just my perception. I may be wrong, but I just, you sir, just correct me whether I'm
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. You hit the nail on the head. So on the production side, India, South Asia has been very successful. There is the food there. And as you say, so 40% of fruit and vegetables go to waste in India, 40%. And what's interesting is, so in Europe, for example, if you look at the supply chain, the wastage happens in the home. So people go to supermarkets, purchase fruit and vegetables, they take it home and don't eat it, it goes in the bin, which is bad, and that needs to be addressed. In a lot of developing countries, on the other hand, in India, the wastage happens between production going from the farm gate to the consumer. That's where the main wastage is. And it's, again, similar figures, 40%. And the consequence of that are, one, this high variability in price. So because you have a boom and bust, as you say, farmers just throw things away because they can't get the price that they need. So that has to be addressed. So it's those policies that need to be addressed. Because the key take-home I'd like you to have is that it's about affordability, it's about access, and it's about availability of food. Now, we know, except for those very remote regions, and there are some in India, the potential for a diverse diet is available, but people don't have access to it and people can't afford it. So those issues need to be addressed, as well as the production side.
Thank you, sir.
There's no one there to have any query again. I just request Fozia. Dr. Fozia Shah, please unmute yourself. Fozia, unmute yourself.
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Okay, I request you just to say a few words in the favor of our this speaker, honorable speaker of the day. Now, before we end this meeting, let you just pay a vote of thanks to the speaker, please.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, I am.
Assalamualaikum, sir. Good afternoon to everyone. We know there has been enough food in the world to feed everyone, yet more and more people are going to bed hungry every night. And we know we have to end this hunger on a global scale, and we need a solution that will work to end this long haul. We are really thankful, grateful to Dr. Nafis Mesar that he incited us about the various things like biofortification of the feeds, glycemic foods, and he has sensitized us all, the organizers, the speakers, who are the listeners here. We are really blessed and grateful to have a great eminent scientist in this session. We are really thankful to you, sir. We hope that this session, what you have acquainted us, the knowledge about the zero hunger and the strategies, what you have planned will help us to overcome this zero hunger in the coming decades. We are really thankful to you, sir. I really, from my deep core of my heart, from the fraternity of the squash, all the participants, and from the organizing committees, I'm really thankful you, sir, to be the part of this small webinar gathering. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much to share your time, to share your knowledge, share your experiences with us. Thank you, sir. Have a nice day ahead, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
And let me just say it's been a delight. It's been a very interesting set of questions, and I've been very happy to participate.
Thank you. So nice of you, sir. Highly obliged, sir. So I'll be ending this meeting now over here. We wish now tomorrow, hopefully in the 9 morning, we'll assemble over here and we will have the lectures. The flyer is already with you. There is some change in the flyer. We will come to you through our WhatsApp groups or through the emails. Please be informed that we join the meeting tomorrow at 9 sharp, please. Thank you, everybody.